Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and welcome to my July 2019 horoscope report for you. It is my intention for this video to give you the information that I believe that you need to make this the best month possible and learn a little astrology while you're at it. Definitely go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com, where I have a very extensive astrology blog, including blogs on the new and full moons and how best to use those power periods. If you are interested in learning astrology and you resonate with how I teach, check out my astrology apprenticeship program, also at anniehelpsyou.com. Definitely check out my new book, that has become a beautiful bedside companion and purse-toting companion for my fellow spiritual seekers, an Amazon bestseller, Radical Prayer, Transform Your Life and the World in 28 Days. And you can see that at radicalprayerbook.com. So what do we have in store for you this month? I'm going to go into lots of details. Let's check them out now. Hello, Pisces friends. Welcome to my July 2019 horoscope report for you. We have massive emotion, high drama, awesome manifestations, wonderful chances to take your passion and convert it into surprise ways to make money all this month. So I'm going to go into lots of details about how the planets and houses will activate this amazing series of potentials for you. We've got 2 eclipses this month. Definitely check out my June report for even more details about where the eclipses are going to hit for you. But suffice to say, massive amounts of change coming, doors closing, new ones opening, and lots of energy that's supportive specifically to Pisces this month, because we have a massive amount of energy in Cancer, which is a fellow water sign, making beautiful aspects to all of your Pisces placements. And we have a crowding of energy in a certain arena of your chart, including Mercury retrograde is happening. We've got that to talk about. So I want to go into lots of details. So the flow for the rest of the video is as follows. I'm going to drop the charts in for Pisces specifically and show you on the charts the things that I have in mind for you that are going to be coming up. After that, I'm going to drop in a Mercury retrograde tutorial video, followed by the general transits, the dates of the most important to note, and other things that I believe that you need in order to make the most of this month. We are going to go into very detailed explanations of where Mercury is going to be retrograde for Pisces first, and then the general Mercury retrograde tutorial that follows that will just have general ways to navigate through the transits. Okay, so let's go in to see the Pisces charts now. Okay, so for this month, the things that I'm most focusing on are actually going to be the same for early, middle, and late degree placements. But I will show you how to designate yourself out, just so that if you're wanting to learn astrology, you can kind of see how the charts shift a bit depending on where your placement is. So early Pisces, basically February born, or 0 to 9 degrees. Middle degree Pisces around March 1st through 10th, or 10 to 19 degrees. And late Pisces, March 11th through the rest of the sign, or 20 to 29 degrees. I do often get the question, is this reading applicable if Pisces is your rising or moon? And the answer is yes. It is true at the same time as your other placements that you watch for. So if you watch for your sun, watch for your moon, and watch for your rising, whatever those different signs are each going to have a piece for you of the total astrological picture for the month. Okay, so my theme for you this month has to do with passion, your passion being monetized. Okay, so I'm using the late degree chart, but this is actually going to turn out to be true for early, middle, and late degree. And I will peek through the charts to show you, but first I want to explain what I'm talking about. The 5th house is the house of passion and creativity. It's the gifts that we have. Sometimes it's hidden talents that we don't even know that we have. It's the thing that puts us out in front of other people, either directly where they're looking at us when we're doing our gift, singing or playing sports or whatever it is, or whether our art or our creation is on display. It's the place where people are looking at us or something that we make or something that we're doing. Pisces people are very, very highly creative. Every Pisces that I know is just really gifted at some sort of creative arts, however that manifests. Uranus, the planet of surprises and technology and new things and things coming out of the blue, unconventional things. is in the second house for all early, middle, and late degree placements now. All right, so let's just drop back just to show you this. Okay, so Uranus is there for the lates. Uranus is there, let's see, for the middle. Uranus is there for the early. As a teacher, the first thing I want to just point out is how Uranus is shifted a bit depending on whether you're early, middle, or late. This is, one of the first most important things to know when you're looking at these charts is there was quite a lot of time when the early and middle degree people had Uranus in the second house and the late degree people didn't. So some of you very late degree placements, Uranus isn't quite there, but it's close enough that it's having an influence. So it's the manifestations are going to be the same. But you can see that it drops back depending on the degree where you're at. So like I started out by saying, this month the things I'm talking about are actually all true for all of you, but that's not always true. Sometimes middle or late degree placements have a little bit of a different tilt to their chart for the aspects we're looking at. Okay, so the second house has to do with finances. It has to do with sustainability. It has to do with money. So when you have Uranus here, it can be very unsettling. It can be very unstable, but it can also give you new, unconventional ideas out of the blue for how you can make money. There's a lot of brilliance that goes along with that Uranus transit. So now if you take it, I'm just kind of using these different charts, but you see it's all the same. And then you combine it with a really busy fifth house. There's the middle degree chart with the busy fifth house. There's the late degree chart with the busy fifth house. And there's the early chart with the busy fifth house. Okay, so having a busy fifth house at the same time as the force of surprises from Uranus can activate this possibility of monetizing your passion. Something to note is that a lot of the energy that is connecting from this fifth house is Leo. And as you can see, that's 1, 2, 3 signs away from Taurus. So that is actually a 90-degree angle in most of these cases, which is a challenging one. So sometimes the stress of finances can force the need to use your creativity resourcefully to make something happen. So there could be an awkwardness or a desperation to the situation, but it still could have the same result, which is you figure out ways to monetize your passion to improve your finances. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about is Mercury retrograde. Besides the other things accentuating the fifth house, Mercury is going to be going retrograde through the fifth house. And that is going to bring up, that coupled with the other energy there, is going to bring up certain themes with a tilt to the past. Okay, so first I just want to show you the Mercury retrograde transit for the early, middle, and late, and then I will go into detail about the ways I've seen this manifest. So Mercury is going to be retrograde from 4 degrees of Leo back to 23 degrees of Cancer. All right, so that's going to take place around there for early. That's going to take place, see, the fifth house for you, also middle. And that's also going to be there for the late degree placements. So that's what I mean about the theme of this Mercury retrograde is pretty much just taking this focus into the fifth house. So what does the fifth house mean? And what are the ways I have seen this manifest? Okay, so now the first thing to note is that when I'm explaining these things to you, I'm looking at it from the perspective of not only tracking these things for almost 20 years, but also from having talked to thousands of clients live, training countless apprentices, and really paying a lot of attention to how this energy manifests. Okay, so that's where this is coming from. It's not random or arbitrary. When we have retrograde energy or any kind of a focus energy in the fifth house, we see a highlight on children, creative projects, hobbies, sports, recreation, gambling, pleasure, fun, romance, and true love. Many a person will have a person they consider to be their true love come back from the past. Exes will drop in like crazy. Problems or romance from the past with your current partner. So like a renaissance of some kind, or issues to have to go through to get to the good, or a questioning of the relationships. That is very, very common. Okay, so we have the arena of romance and true love. That's going to come up for many people. If you meet someone for the first time that you think is your true love, do wait a little while before making big decisions with them, because a lot of times when something comes in new in the retrograde, there's information that we don't have yet. Okay, so just kind of like sit tight and see how it unfolds. It doesn't mean it can't be something important. It just means that you might not be seeing things clearly at this time. Creativity and creative projects. So creative projects from the past or ideas from the past often drop in a big way. Sometimes the creative projects can relate to a way that, money was made in the past, or something you were excited about in the past, or art for art's sake, something like that. But in any way, creative projects from the past will likely come up to have life breathed back into them. Okay, so things having to do with children, conception, pregnancy, miscarriage, getting healthy for pregnancy, something like that, childbirth, care of the children you have, adoption, working with children, working with grandkids, anything involving children. A child might need some attention. Something from the past that was a problem for them before could come back up. They could have a major milestone or an accomplishment, or something they were working on could come to fruition or completion. There could be anything involving children coming up. Fun for the sake of itself is another thing. Fun, diversion, things that used to be fun can come back in a big way. Also, ways that you've had fun could be questioned. A lot, Mercury retrograde, as we'll go into it when after this segment, I'll drop in a Mercury retrograde tutorial. But a lot of times things get called into question. So the ways that you've had fun could be called into question. For some people, it could be maybe you're getting older and rock climbing isn't feeling as good as it used to. Not, of course, that I'm limiting any active seniors, because I would not do that. But just I've seen this happen where like something you're doing is like, maybe I'm not into that anymore. Also could be that you're doing something for fun like gambling, or something that is involving an addiction that's not good for you, and you start questioning, is this really the best thing for me? Or there could be a situation where there's an excess of something that you're doing and it causes a problem that makes you reevaluate your relationship with that certain thing. So that is the fifth house in a nutshell. Anything like being out in a leadership position, singing, acting, modeling, athleticism, where you're leading a group, anything like that is very strongly supported by this fifth house. So you might see pieces like that come in. Okay, so now I'm going to drop in the Mercury retrograde tutorial. I think it's very important for everyone to know this information, because it will definitely come up for most people. But if you're not interested in that level of learning, you can just fast forward until you see me back on the screen, at which point I'll give you the dates to note for the month, more information about the general transits that will affect you, and how to best use them. Hi, this is going to be a quick tutorial of the energy of Mercury as it relates to the retrograde cycle, and the things to keep in mind that are most important to hold in your consciousness as we go through this phase. So the first thing to know is that Mercury is retrograde or in its shadow, pre or post shadow period, for about half of the year. So half of our lives we are in this. That's why it's really important to understand it. The second thing to know is that Mercury is retrograde for 3-ish weeks at a time, and there's about a 2-ish week before and after shadow transit. So the pre transit shadow period and the post shadow transit period. So all in all, it's about a 7-ish week process. So it is kind of long at a time. And the implications of Mercury retrograde are very strongly seen in this pre-shadow period and especially in the first part of this post-shadow period. And then they tend to like linger and just sort of wear off towards the end of that post-shadow period. Mercury rules communication and mobility. So anything involving speaking, writing, communicating, publishing, your devices that you use for communicating, your phones, computers, things like that, your cars, vehicles, walking, your mobility, your capacity to be mobile, your legs, the things that make you able to be mobile. If someone's in a wheelchair, their wheelchair would be there, or whatever it is that is related to your personal mobility. One thing to note as I describe the rest of this is that for people who are born with Mercury retrograde at birth, sometimes they feel the opposite effects of what everybody else feels during a Mercury retrograde period, and that things can flow even better for them during a Mercury retrograde period than when Mercury is direct. So if you have come to notice that, it may be because you have Mercury retrograde at birth. And it also may mean that you have, even if you don't officially have Mercury retrograde, and this is definitely a way more technical thing for you to have to try to figure out, but if Mercury was in a pre or post shadow period close to the retrograde, you could experience having Mercury retrograde from the birth perspective, even though it wouldn't as readily show up on your chart. So that's an important thing to note as well. Okay, so what tends to happen when Mercury is in retrograde is that there are changes to plans. There is uncertainty or confusion about what direction to take. There are plans that were made that are called into question. They may turn out to work out, but they get called into question. Things get called into question. Relationships get called into question. The use of devices and transportation gets called into question. Plans get called into question. And then sometimes they'll work out and sometimes they won't. But this calling into question is a typical Mercury retrograde thing. The topics of travel will often come up, and this can be a fine time for travel. There is a misconception that you shouldn't travel during Mercury retrograde. That's not true. You just have to be more aware because plans tend to change. Gates tend to change at the last minute. Issues with a car tend to come up if you're on a road trip, if you haven't, gotten everything checked out first or whatever, or even sometimes if you did. Impediments to travel, changes. When you're making agreements, Mercury also rules agreements. So if you're agreeing to something, the odds are that you're going to change what you're agreeing to. So it doesn't lend itself as well for long-term or rigid agreements. There are exceptions. If you're in there, don't worry. There are exceptions. But if you are negotiating during Mercury retrograde, you're either not seeing the whole picture, someone is purposely or inadvertently hiding something from you, or there are things that are coming that you're not aware of that are going to change how you can interact in the agreement that you've made. So in general, it is a good idea to be flexible. Flexible, temporary bridge agreements are like the theme that I like to put out there to best use this energy. Let's say you have to negotiate something or you're agreeing to something, and if it's minor or low stakes, you don't have to worry as much. It's the big things, that are more important. But there could be some minor things where it would be helpful to know this. Okay, so keep your flexibility. Try to make a interim or bridge agreement. So like, for instance, let's say you're trying to get a tenant in a house or in a professional space, and Mercury's in retrograde. Something like a month to month, totally awesome to embark on in a Mercury retrograde because you can get out of it. something like a 3-month lease or even 3 to 6 months, something short term. You can make something for a month and then renegotiate when the planets are more clear, the energy is more clear. So those are ways that I like to deal with the Mercury retrograde. And it's definitely a good time to be aware that you might have things happen to your cars and phones and stuff. In general, I don't love this time as the best time to get a new device or car unless you can help it, or unless it's a short-term or interim device. Like, let's say you get a temporary phone to bridge you over something, that's more appropriate. Or you get a car that you plan to have for 3 to 6 months, or something like that. But for things that you're hoping to keep long-term, the retrogrades tend to make it shorter term, and that's typical. Another place to be careful is launches. Big, awesome, life-changing, once-in-a-lifetime launches are not the ones you want to have when Mercury is in retro. However, let's say you're a teacher and you teach classes twice a year, and Mercury retrograde, is the time for your re-enrollment. Re-enrollment is much better supported. But do also expect that when you have launches in a Mercury retrograde cycle, that more people are going to be wishy-washy, and there's more of a chance for people that have joined that are going to leave the class. So, it's not always a reliable time frame for trying to get people to commit to things, depending on what the nature of it is. It's hard. Commitments get a little bit more difficult. So basically, the things to remember for Mercury retrograde is the flexibility, be extra careful, check your plans, your travel plans and other things, and documents and agreements extra carefully. And then anything that has the prefix re, pretty much, there's going to be exceptions to this, but rejuvenation, redoing, re-editing, rethinking, reconsidering, even rest. It's a good time to rest. Anything like that where you're like going back over something is better indicated than something brand new, if possible, unless the new thing is short term or a bridge or something you consider doing, like, oh, I've always wanted to try that. Maybe I'll take that class, and the class is, 6 months or whatever. That can be fine. What we really need to have caution with is the bigger things and the things that are higher stakes, etc. Mercury retrograde can be an amazing time. You can get lots of this stuff done, inspiration from the past, tying up loose ends from the past, and preparing for a nice fertile ground for future wonderful things. I'm calling the theme of July 2019 for all signs, 3 times the manifestation power, bold new directions, and time to be brave. It's always interesting when we have a transit like Mercury retrograde that brings this eye to the past, coinciding with so much potential for new energy. So we've got 2 intense eclipses this month, plus 2 new moons this month. Whenever we have a month with 2 new moons, it opens up more potentials for brilliant new paths, and the same thing with the eclipses. But this is happening all under the cover of this Mercury retrograde. So that means that themes from the past, things worked on in the past, contacts from the past, plans from the past, are all going to factor in very heavily to the new opportunities that come. So we talked at length about Mercury retrograde and where that hit in your chart or will hit in your chart, and also what the implications are there. So we're going to go into some additional things to know about this month. The eclipses obviously are bringing massive changes. The transits this month are pretty equal as far as sweet or challenging, and a lot of them could just really go either way. So when we have a situation where there's a transit that's occurring and someone can either manifest something positive or something challenging from it, it really makes it more important for us to watch how we're looking at things. the perspective that we have on life, the perspective that we have on everything, colors, changes, effects, how we experience things. So the more you can be well rested and positive can help you to frame the energies that come in. And the more present you can be emotionally is also going to flavor this month, because with the eclipses and with the Cancer energies and even with the retrograde energies, there's a massive amount of emotion this month. High emotional tides this month, for better and worse. So amazing culminations, things that you've been hoping for forever, can just come to you at this time. I always think about the eclipse time as the vision of the spider with the web. You've spent all this time until July weaving this beautiful web. And sometimes those webs can get really big. I think about the webs I've seen like in the rainforest in Costa Rica, like, you know, taller than a person, these gigantic webs. And of course the spiders that go along with them are pretty big too. But in any case, this web that you've created, now the eclipse time and the retrograde time are both times to just sit back and see what food comes to you. It's not the best time for initiating something huge, although sometimes chance or other things force it to happen that way. But the more you can be flexible, be relaxed, be well rested, not be super intent on pushing an agenda, being flexible, the more you can observe what is coming to you so that you can strike or take in according to what feels the best with the options that come to you. It's a fine time for research, but it's not the best time necessarily to try to push something to happen. It's more of an acceptance of what's coming in and what you're going to do with it. A lot of the eclipse news and changes may have already taken place before the actual eclipses, which occur this month. So you may already be steeped in, rolling around in, coping with, for better and worse, the eclipse changes. So the Cancer energy is bringing in a lot of emotion, a lot of tilt towards the energy of home, family, housing, home projects, you know, things involving childhood psychology, upbringing, having to take some steps backwards in order to be able to take steps, future steps forward. But there's also a coinciding energy of Leo. And Leo is going to give us the audacity to do something with the opportunities that come to us. Also a zest and a passion and creative expression. So in general, new moons and full moons have power for positive changes and things coming to a head, things coming out into the open, things coming to manifestation. When we have eclipses on an eclipse on a new moon or a full moon, it gives us 3 times the manifestation power. So 3 times the new beginnings, 3 times the drama or culmination, or things coming to a head. So it's just definitely a powerful month. Very, very, very intense. Intensity is another keynote of this time. As we talked about in the June horoscopes, and definitely if you haven't watched my June horoscopes, you want to do that because I cover the eclipses in detail. There's so much to talk about for this time period. I couldn't fit it all in 1 month. So in June, I go into detail and tell you exactly where the eclipses will hit for you and what manifestations you can see. So definitely rewatch that here in July, even if you watch them in June, so that you can be better poised for understanding the changes that are coming. But in general, the eclipse cycle of Cancer and Capricorn bring in lots of changes to home and family and work and your place out in the world, things with mother and father, and your maternal and paternal energies. Look back to 2009 to 2011 and 2000 to 2001. Those are the times when we experienced this Capricorn Cancer eclipse cycles in the past. So you might see patterns. And I have gotten this question. If those have been your worst times, don't worry. That's not necessarily going to happen again. It's the themes that are brought up that are common to have a continuum. So the areas of life that were a focus, those will likely be a focus at this time. And it doesn't have to manifest the same way that it did. Okay, so I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights here as certain dates to note that are my favorite or my most you have to watch out for. If you want a complete list of the aspects that are occurring and what's involved with those aspects, what planets and signs are at play, and what you can expect from those, definitely sign up for my free email newsletter at anniehelpsyou.com. You'll also get my 28-day virtual coaching program called Shine for free when you sign up for my free email newsletter. Plus, you'll get a written detailed email newsletter a month before, just like I do the horoscopes a month before, of the dates and the aspects and what to look out for, so you have them for your planning purpose and you get those a month early. So you can see that at anniehelpsyou.com. But we'll hit some highlights here. The new moons are going to be, well, first the new moon and the solar eclipse, 10 degrees of Cancer, is on July 2nd. So that is a time of major intensity. I do have blogs on my website for how to make the most of each new moon and each full moon in the different signs. So definitely check those out. Mercury is going to go retrograde at 4 degrees of Leo and back to 23 degrees of Cancer. We talked about this at length, but that's occurring on July 7th, and that pretty much goes until July 31st or August 1st, depending on your time zone. The whole month is covered in Mercury retrograde. We've got some challenges to look out for as far as squares and oppositions throughout the month, and you can see the details of that in my newsletter. But one of the things that I most want you to be aware of is the full moon eclipse on July 16th. That is a lunar eclipse, 24 degrees of Capricorn, lots of intensity around that time, things coming to culmination. Be extra careful and also look out for extra rewards and things that you've worked on from the past that can come in a big way. I always try to keep that period of time a little bit light if possible. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but just be extra careful around that time. What they say about the full moons with, crazy things happening is really true. Whenever you watch these mystical shows or like Merlin or whatever, it's always a full moon when these, crazy things go on. So just take note of that and be prepared to deal with whatever comes. The second full moon, or rather the second new moon, is at 8 degrees of Leo, and that's on July 31st, or thereabouts, depending on your time zone. So the second new moon in the calendar month is a black moon, and there's extra power at this time for wishes and new beginnings. So plenty of opportunities for new beginnings. This month is just chock full of them. Throughout the month, we have some challenges with Uranus, we have challenges with Pluto, we have challenges, Pluto, Uranus, kind of a theme there, Saturn. So some of the outer planets are in challenging configurations, and this can bring tests, but it doesn't have to be a be-all, end-all. Often it can bring overstimulation, and that could be a major theme of this month. We could get through this month and have complete positive outcomes and no negativity at all. Certain people will have that experience. Other people will have massive drama and lots of challenges, but there's no one way it has to go. It's wide open here. But understanding the element of the opposition is important because oppositions are pulling us in two different directions. So be prepared to be pulled in two different directions, and also be prepared to be overstimulated. This is going to be an incredibly busy month physically, like moving around, doing stuff. Emotionally, it will be busy. You will be handling things. You might be holding space for other people who are dealing with changes. During eclipse cycles, we'll often see people around us going through massive change, and sometimes we are too. So it's hard to tell at this point if you're going to be a space holder for other people as they go through these big changes, or if you're going to be one of the people going through the big changes, or both. Sometimes in eclipse time, we're going through these big changes and we're also holding space for other people doing that. So be prepared to be overstimulated emotionally and mentally. That's why this theme of just trying to be well rested is really important, because we know that you can't really handle things as well when you're tired. So the more you can be not tired and take your supplements and, do whatever you need to for support, do your walks, do your exercise, you're going to much better be able to use the energies that are present at this time. And there are a lot of sweet aspects in between these challenging ones. So there are some nuisances, but there are lots of sweet things too. Okay, so definitely go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com. I have an extensive astrology blog plus other blogs that you can check out there on different topics. If you resonate with how I teach and would love to learn, my astrology apprenticeship program is open for enrollment, and I will teach you everything you need to know to do astrology professionally, or if you just want it for your self-development process, it's amazing for that as well. You can check out all the other kinds of goodies I have on my site, including subliminal recordings that I create for you to help and train your brain to the positive changes that you're trying to make. And you can also see my other professional development courses there. Definitely check out my book, Radical Prayer, Transform Your Life and the World in 28 Days. As I mentioned before, it has become a purse friend. It has become a car friend, a bedtime companion. It's just an amazing book for the spiritual seeker to really help you to use the power of word and prayer and intention to manifest the positive changes you want to see in your life. Check out my husband's website, IamHelios.com. He has amazing options now for you to use audio, subliminal, power-packed, frequency-enhanced recordings to mitigate the negative energies of transits and to enhance the positive energies of astrological transits. So we've worked together in the way of trying to figure out what resources would be best for you based on the things I see in the charts. So you can see the options for audios that can help you to maximize the transit. So you can check that out at IamHelios.com. Also, you can book a live reading at my site, AnnieHelpsYou.com, either with me or my amazing apprentice, Marilee. And you can also book sessions with my husband, B.R. Newman, at IamHelios.com. Okay, so those are the things I most have in mind for you this month. I hope you have a wonderful month, and I'll see you next month. Bye.